What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Devy Royale channel. I am your host, as always, Kevin Coleman at DuBois_22. Now that we're in October, heading to November, I think it's a good time for us to do a 2023 rookie mock through 3 rounds, big board, little bit of film breakdown. Let's get into it. All right, let's dive in. So we're going to do a 2023 rookie mock here at the Devy Royale. Make sure you subscribe below. We are going to talk about guys like, hey, so super flex. So this is a super flex rookie mock, where we think guys are at right now. And so every week on footballguys.com, I do a top 36 big board. So every week, if you're a subscriber there, I talk about, hey, these are the guys that you should be watching, the good performances, and kind of some class narratives, big board watch, all of that, just to give you ideas, because I think it's important. And I think it's essential almost that you know who you're trading away and what you're trading away and the value of those picks. So I think one thing I hope that you get from this is where those picks are going to be valued. And I think that's the key. So we're going to do a first, second, and third round. And again, these things will change as we get more information and all this, but I do think that there's clear tier breaks. So the one thing I'm going to do for you is I'm going to talk about those tier breaks are. So let's look at the first round. So right now, here's our mock in terms of a super flex board. CJ Stroud at the 101, Bryce Young at the 102, Bijan at the 103, Jackson Smith-Njigba at the 104, Jordan Addison 105, and Gibbs at the 106. Very good board, right? Just thinking of like who's on the board, where's everybody at. Now, again, this is a mock, and this is also just, hey, preference based. If you needed a running back and you kind of you have a team that's ready to go, I could see Bijan going at the 101. I understand he's a good prospect. I understand there's because some hesitancy with the quarterbacks, with how the quarterbacks have played. Lawrence, Fields, these guys that we're talking about. So I do know there's hesitancy, but if I had to rank the top 36 super flex assets, especially with the quarterback position the way it is, CJ and Bryce are up there for me, but Bijan, like I feel like those three are pretty much where you're at in terms of where the super flex mock is, where you're going to be at, right? Then it kind of goes, okay, Jackson Smith-Njigba is still 4 for me because I'm still basing it on talent, based on production of what he's done. I know he's been injured this year. We haven't been able to see him. And I think there's a caveat to that. Then Jordan Addison has really come out of nowhere at USC. I think there's an argument that he could be a little higher. He's looked very good this season. How far does he go? And then Jahmyr Gibbs, man, Gibbs has been on a tear lately. So we're talking about Gibbs. Just in terms of what he's produced, people were worried about in the first few weeks of the season. They said, hey, is this kid really that good? What is he? Is he just a receiver? And he's come out swinging the last few games against Tennessee at 103 yards and 3 touchdowns. In my opinion, he should have got a little bit more usage. Texas A&M, 154 yards. And in Arkansas, 206 yards actually came out of there. Then you look at his receptions. He already has 27 receptions, 268 yards. I think the best thing about Gibbs is that you see him now become a legitimate running back, and you're like, okay, this guy could be a 3-down back, even though his size. I think his size is still like, hey, what are you doing? Analytics isn't going to like the 200-pound mark, but if he can be over 200, then I'm going to be less concerned. Now, I do want to do a little bit of player spotlight. Let's talk about my guy Bryce. So let's look at it or kind of go through the film. You know, there's no one more that I respect than Bryce Young. Bryce can play. Like I think, and I talked about it on Twitter. If you follow me, I just said, like, you know, everybody knows I've been a Bryce guy. I was a Bryce over DJU guy even after DJU's freshman year. Like, I've just loved Bryce. I think that he's a gamer, and I know analytics crews are going to hear that and be like, damn, I wish he didn't say that. He's a gamer, man. You watch what he's going to do. He's been their offense for 2 years. Yes, they lost against Tennessee, but he was hurt. And here, I know they came up short in a national title game, but they just ran out of weapons. His receiving core has been the worst that Alabama's probably had in a long time, and he's been really good. Bryce, this season, 1,600 yards, 16 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He has looked fantastic, and I think the thing with Bryce is that he is just someone, I know he's size, right? So he's listed at 6 foot. He's probably 5'11", 5'10". I know that there's some concern, but this is the stuff that you like to see from the film. Step up in the pocket. He's able to find his guy. He's good maneuverability. He has the knowledge, the wherewithal, right? So when you're thinking of as a quarterback, he just knows the game. And I think that is under pressure, he's one of the best quarterbacks. I think this too, when we're talking about what he's been able to do rushing wise, the first 2 games, he really did it. He's really set that apart. 138 yards rushing, or 150 yards rushing those 138, excuse me, the first 2 games, right? And then he has 150 on the year. So we've kind of seen that dip a little bit, but that's because of the injuries. They didn't want to get hurt. But he has stepped up. And so Bryce, to me, as a player, just watch. Like, where are these guys going to go in the top 2? Landing spot dependent. I did a mailbag episode. If you want to check that out, they asked me, like, what are my favorite landing spots? Falcons and the Lions, man. I don't know if they're going to be there. They might play them outside of the sweepstakes there. Someone's going to get stuck in Carolina, so hopefully they get a good coaching staff. But if you can get one of those 2 guys, man, I'm all aboard the Bryce train. So I just want to give a shout out to Bryce, what he's been able to do. And again, if he can separate himself here as a runner, now we're talking about a legitimate prospect for fantasy, right? So, okay, where are we projecting this guy? If he can do this, little Russell Wilson-esque, now we're talking about something. Now, let's go to the second half of the first round. Zach Evans, running back from Ole Miss at 107. Quentin Johnson at the 108. Kayshon Boutte at the 109. Now, a couple of things here. Zach Evans is still a good prospect. I know some people are talking about him because, you know, Judkins has done very well there. So Judkins is a true freshman, and they're like, well, who's the better running back? They're just spilling each other here. You know, Jackson Dart has been struggled this year. I think Zach Evans has looked very, very good and very solid just in terms of what he's been able to do on the field. So when we're talking about Zach, you know, 100 carries, 605 yards, 7 touchdowns. He's looked good against Auburn, 136 yards and a touchdown. There's only been 1 game he hasn't scored a touchdown. He's been very efficient, very solid. And I think this running back class is the big part of this class. Quentin Johnson's come on now. Like, he had a really slow start of the season, but the last 2 games, he's starting to look like that superstar we thought. The guy that I have a question mark with Kayshon. Like, Kayshon is one of those players who everybody kind of said, hey, he's going to be the wide receiver 1 of this class, and he just had a terrible year. I mean, he had 23 catches for 245 yards and a touchdown. He did come back against Florida, though. He had 6 catches, 115 yards. That's promising, right? So it's really what you think of these guys. I think Kayshon's still at the wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3. I'm just pumping up Quentin because he's shown that he's like had that production-wise. Kayshon's going to test out of the numbers, though. So it's really just, hey, what's testing going to look like? But that's just a cop-out. Like, based on where this class is at, I think that's there. Now, I do think there's kind of a dip. So at the 108, 109, I think there's a tier break. You have Joshua Downs from North Carolina. He's looked very good this season. Michael Mayer, Notre Dame's offense is absolutely trash, but Michael Mayer is the one outlier there. He's looked good. And then I have Sean Tucker at the 112. Sean Tucker is going to be an interesting prospect. What's he going to test at? So that's the question with Sean Tucker, in my opinion. What's he going to test at? What is his testing numbers? What's his speed? 4.4, 4.5? Where's he at? I think that's going to be the key. Production, you can't hate it. 124 carries, 644 yards, 6 touchdowns this season. He's looked really good there from the production standpoint. What is he going to do in terms of his testing there? But you got to love it there. Now, I will say there's a tier break, 108, 109, depending on what you think of those 2 wide receivers. If you're going to get in there. Now, there's also a tier break in terms of the first round. Like, I want to get in the top 6. Like, if I can get in the top 6, I feel very comfortable. Also, the 7th mark, if it's Zach Evans, like, I feel like 107 higher, you're going to get a dude. You're going to get a guy that can help your dynasty teams, and you're going to get a good prospect. Zach Evans, those guys, these runners. Now, I will say some of the wide receivers might get pushed down because the running backs are so good that they're going to push them down a little bit. So we're going to see some talent at the end of the first. I think it might come in the wide receiver room, though. Now, let's go to the second round. So you just look at the board. We're going to go through all of them. Blake Corum at the 201, Zach Charbonnet at 202, Tank Bigsby 203. 204 is Kendall Milton. Might get some pushback on that because he hasn't done much this year, but I'm still basing that on upside and player ability. Devin Chain at 205. Again, size. I don't know what to do there. Ainias Smith, 206. He's been injured the whole year. I'm still putting him in that 202. Second round, just based on his versatility, what he was able to do. Kendre Miller, who's popping up, TCU running back. Cedric Tillman at 208. 209, Hendon Hooker. 210, Israel Abakana. 211, Marvin Mims. 212, Jacob Cowan. You're talking about some pretty good legitimate talent here, and you're looking at the board. Like, hey, there's some guys in this class that you can kind of get in this area. Now, the third round's talented as well. And again, this is all based on testing numbers. This will change. But I do want to highlight, look at those running backs, man. Like, there are some solid running backs in that second round. So if you want to wait, get a wide receiver. If you're going to miss out on like the Gibbs, the Bijans, and the Evans of the world, grab that wide receiver and then go tack the running backs in that second round. I do think there's value to be had there. Now, the guy I do want to kind of watch and just point out is my guy, Blake Corum. Blake Corum is a Heisman candidate right now, and Blake Corum has played very well. He's going to be one of these hotly debated running backs, though. He's got good size. Good feet. Like, his size is okay, though. 210, 5'8". I know he's smaller side. I know people have talked to him, comped him. I think Christian Williams to Doug Martin. So the size I don't think is that big of a concern, but when you're looking at just what he's been able to do this year, I mean, he's been fantastic. And if 146 attempts, 901 yards already. So 901 yards in 7 games, right? So we're talking about a legitimate prospect here. 13 touchdowns on the ground. And without Corum, Michigan's lost a couple games. Like, he's really stepped up against Penn State, which had one of the best rush defenses, and whether you think it was or not, it was rated rise. He had 28 attempts, 166 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He looked phenomenal. Pass catching, those type of things, hey, those are going to come. But Corum has been one of the best players in the Big Ten. If you can get a player like Corum in the second round, and you're talking about a legitimate prospect in the NCAA, right? And he tests well and he gets there. That just shows you the value of this class. And I think that is the crux of this class. That's the narrative, right? So when I wrote about it on Football Guys and I talked about it, running back class is that narrative. You'll see it here again. Now, offensive line wise, Michigan's got one of the best offensive lines in the country. Okay, so there is that. But Corum has definitely separated himself. I think he has the quickest feet in the country, just like there. He bounces to the outside, maneuver in the line of scrimmage, making those cuts. Like, those are the type of things that you love to see for Corum. Corum does that, right? So this is what we're talking about. Now, this, though, is that area of the class, right? So this, if we're talking about just where am I at in Superflex leagues? Where am I at right now in this draft class? The reason why we're doing this is so that you can see, hey, 201 to 212, you're going to find some guys and there's some talent, and there's still more guys here. So let's go to the third round. Third round, Will Levis at the 301, 302, Anthony Richardson, A.T. Perry at the 303. Now, I want to put a caveat next to Anthony Richardson. I'm going to rate Anthony Richardson, but I do think he comes back next season. So I don't necessarily know if he's going to be in this draft class, but I've got to put him out there because we don't know yet, right? A.T. Perry from Wake Forest, Dontavian Wicks from Virginia, Zay Flowers, Boston College, one of my favorite prospects who, if you can get him in the third round, that's a pretty good value. Mayan Williams, someone that you all need to watch. I know not everybody loves college football. He's the backup of TreVeyon Henderson, but he has looked just as good, if not better, this season. He's one of those guys that maybe has that NFL build, that pop-off build, 5'9", 225. He's been legitimately talented this season. Muhammad Ibrahim coming off that Achilles tear. He's looked very good this year. Lou Nichols, the third from Central Michigan. I still have him in the top 36, but his speed really concerns me in terms of what he's been able to do. Rasheed Rice, 309, SMU wide receiver. He's looked very good this season, and I like his size and his speed and everything's there. Then you're looking at, hey, Raheem Jarrett. What does he look like, right? Then you have Jalen Hyatt, Tennessee. You got to talk about Jalen Hyatt. Jalen Hyatt had a legit game against Alabama. That kid was absolutely phenomenal. And I know people are going to say, hey, it was just a one-off. I'm going to tell you right now, Jalen Hyatt from Tennessee is one of those guys who's on my big board watch, and I put him on there this week just because of his numbers. Hey, he had 6 catches, 207 yards, and 5 touchdowns. But before then, he still was looking very good. He had 2 touchdowns against LSU, 2 touchdowns against Akron. He looked good against Florida and LSU and Pitt, right? 11 catches, 73 yards. So Jalen Hyatt, people might say, like, hey, he was somebody that is a product of that system, but he's looked good, right? He's a junior, has good size, good speed. Jalen Hyatt is a guy to watch. And then John Emery, I still have John Emery up there. I just like him from an NFL perspective. Now, he might not be producing that LSU offense, but from an NFL perspective, I still like him. I like what he's been able to do. He only had 8 carries last game, 31 yards. I do think that if he gets the usage and we're going to see that going forward, I think he can. He's an NFL guy to me more than maybe a college guy, right? I think that is the area that I want to look. Go watch that Auburn touchdown that he had where he got hits in the backfield, able to do this in terms of just breaking tackles after, yards after tackle, yards after contact. John Emery can do that. So those are the first 3 rounds of this mock draft. So first, there's your first half of the first round. Like I said, there's a second half tier break around the 108, the 109. Then you're looking at the second round. Very, very talented guys, running back positions and the wide receivers. And then you're looking at this area. And there's guys in here. Rasheed Rice. There's Jalen Hyatt. Raheem Jarrett. Jarrett's been kind of a disappointment this year, but if he comes out, he's going to test through the roof. He's got good testing. So there's so much talent around the board. You could truly, truly get some guys, right? So there is very good talent in the first 3 rounds of this draft. So I appreciate you guys tuning in as always. Hit that like and subscribe button. We're trying to bring content to you every week. Look for the shorts. Look for everything there. If you haven't checked out Christian's breakdowns for just NFL prospects, you haven't checked out our breakdowns here, we will have content to you guys all the time. Hit that like and subscribe button. Find our college football show on Football Guys. It's in the description below. Hit our Patreon. We appreciate you guys as always. Until next time, I'll see you later.